Yeah, so my background is in philosophy of science and philosophy of mind. I'm now a lecturer at the University of Eastern Finland, but I've spent 5 years in King's College London at the Sowerby Philosophy and Medicine Project. If you don't know about that, Google that, philosophyandmedicine.org. A lot of things on philosophy and medicine, and I'm still affiliated with King's. I haven't been there for a while for obvious reasons. So I'm gonna tackle an issue that many people have already mentioned, I would say, not really discussed, which is the efficacy of psychedelic therapy in the context of naturalism or physicalism. So here's some things, kind of an argument structure that I'm gonna present to you. We'll see what we can actually go through and where we spend our time, but obviously we also have time for discussion, so we can come back to things that I might have to skip. So I start by assuming that psychedelic therapy is an effective way of treating some force of psychiatric disorders or psychological conditions, and it is such due to its ability to induce a variety of mystical type experiences. So this is one the future that makes psychedelic therapy and not some other form of psychotherapy or pharmacological treatment. And but then we have a problem. How can mystical entities be fitted into the naturalistic or physicalistic worldview? And so it appears that the efficacy is illusory, but there's a solution, which is to just focus on the cognitive or neuro-realized function of the psychedelic therapy. And but my final conclusion is that this basically just reduces psychedelic therapy into normal psychotherapy or pharmacologically induced or assisted enhanced psychotherapy. So that will be my conclusion. I'm targeting very explicitly this book that many people have mentioned, came out 2 months ago, Chris Letherby, Philosophy of Psychedelics. I really need to take it out because I actually have this book actually exists. So you only see pictures so far, but there it is. Damn, this is difficult. So as many people have already mentioned, Chris Letherby tries to kind of save psychedelic therapy as a respectable and efficacious psychotherapy or help in psychotherapy in psychiatry or in the naturalistic physicalistic worldview. And as also has been mentioned a few times, he's trying to answer this objection that he calls confronting delusion objection that according to which this novel and promising treatment relies essentially on the induction of non-naturalistic metaphysical beliefs, rendering it epistemically and therefore ethically objectionable. So if we are providing treatments to people that don't fit into our general scientific worldview, we are doing something that is epistemically and ethically dodgy. So this is his objective to tackle this objection. And this is what he argues for. Psychedelic therapy works by disrupting and arising mental representations of the self. This is a genuinely psychological mechanism which involves the psychedelic experience itself. It is not a mere matter of experience-independent neurobiological changes, but it does not depend on non-naturalistic metaphysical ideations. And he calls his view naturalistic spirituality. So he tries to give a naturalistic account of some sort of spirituality. So I mean, I don't know how I suppose many of you are somehow aware of the issue of non-reductive physicalism and philosophy of science and philosophy of mind. This is where he kind of tries to locate himself, even though he doesn't use that word in here. So there are no metaphysically weird entities, but it's not the case that everything is just neurobiology or just physics or something like that. There must be some sort of naturalistic way of saying that that psychological states and all other kind of a higher level states are equally real as physics or neurobiology and so on. And this is philosophically problematic notion. I should say, by the way, that he doesn't. This is a very kind of a big drawback of his book, that he doesn't really address this issue explicitly, and he clearly should, as he's working in a philosophical context in here. So many people have talked about the mystical type experiences, so let's just skip this. But my point is that, and his point is too, that when we are talking about psychedelic therapy, it has this aspect to it. So it has this mystical whatever thing to it. It's not just cognitive behavioral therapy or some other psychological or pharmacologically enhanced psychological intervention. So here's my way of trying to make the problem more poignant. So we start by assuming that psychedelic therapy is effective, and via this mystical type experience. How could that be within our naturalistic and physicalistic worldview? Because it seems that there are two options. Either psychotherapy, we interpret the psychedelic therapy to be efficacious by offering and opening a way to another reality. That there is a mystical realm of another realm of things, and with these substances you connect to this realm, and that's why they are efficacious. Or they're just drugs. They induce neurobiological changes, and all these experiences that go with taking these substances are epiphenomenal. They are illusory. They don't have a real function in the therapy. So he wants to reject both of these options. No mystical things, no another realm of reality, but neither is everything just neurobiology or physics. So the task is to reconcile the apparent effectiveness of psychedelic therapy with the scientific consensus, according to which there is no spiritual realm of reality detached from what we take to be physically real. So many people think that this is, we shouldn't be doing this, and this is, and that's fine, but that's a different discussion. This is what I'm addressing. This is what Chris Leatherbeast is addressing in his book. And my point is that this is just the mind-body problem within the naturalistic, physicalistic world. It's a question of, can we find an independent role for our psychological terms and entities. And it's basically a question is can psychotherapy be efficacious regardless of pharmacological or other physical biological interventions? Are biological interventions always better in psychiatry in this case? So what is a mind-body problem? I just quickly, this is from my paper, because what is mind? It can be a variety of different things. And you can get back to this picture if you want to, or you can find it online. But I just want to point out that I'm setting aside the subjective phenomenal consciousness stuff. I think it's a mistake in this discussion to focus on the phenomenological aspects of psychedelic experiences. The effectiveness of psychedelic therapy is grounded in cognitive aspects of consciousness. I mean, that's Chris Leatherby's point and my point too. And whatever the details are, he might be right in claiming that it's the disrupting and revising of mental representations of the self. So this is a functional, it's a cognitive function. There might be some subjective feelings connected to that, and they are not doing the kind of therapeutic or other kind of real work in this process. And he is also explicit that he is not trying to offer a solution to the so-called hard problem of consciousness. He's not interested in the subjective, qualitative contents of our experiences. But that's the way he often speaks, and a lot of other people speak in this context. And I think that's why I have this, that we have a lot of different ways of talking about mind and or the mental and the physical. So we need to be always clear kind of where we're going. So I think the problem lies elsewhere on how we can make sense of this representational theory of mind, of computational theory of mind within the physical order of things. So again, we're asking how can psychedelic therapy be effective qua-psychedelic therapy? So again, it's a psychological intervention. It has these weird features and so on, and not just being a certain kind of neurobiological intervention. He talks about neurocognitive psychiatry, and I think again he's in going in the right direction, but I think it's awfully confusing in there. We can talk about the details if some of you know about that more. But I mean, the basic problem is that put in terms of mind-body problem, the neurocognitive psychiatry, where there's some sort of a kind of a interplay between cognitive and neural states, is kind of assumes that we have these two levels, and then that we can talk about them. They're real, but at least he seems to assume that there can be some sort of interaction between these, and that's basically what I find problematic. So anyway, I mean, non-reductive physicalism is a unstable position, and it's very well known to be unstable, problematic in many areas of philosophy, in philosophy of science and philosophy of mind. And it is indeed weird that he does not explicitly address this issue. So what is non-reductive physicalism? This is one typical way of introducing it. Terry Fodor, very well known philosopher of mind and cognitive scientist, the idea is basically that we can have genuine high-level entities, but they're always realized as some sort of a lower-level physical entity. So here M is mind and P is a physical state. So every mental state is a physical state, but it can be realized in a variety of different ways. So that's a multiple realizability thesis that was also mentioned. I think Peter at least mentioned it. Non-reactive physicalism could be characterized in various different other ways too, but I think this is the paradigmatic way and perhaps the most kind of a precise way, so that we can actually move on in the discussion. So there's a well-known problem, the so-called causal exclusion problem. Okay, 5 minutes. Let me just see where I'm heading here. So, well, I'll just go on and yeah, we'll see where we get. So according to the causal exclusion problem or causal exclusion argument, as it's here presented more as an argument, so we assume that mental states are causally effective, and so me saying things and me thinking about things causes things in the world and so on. But the physical world is causally closed or complete. So every physical effect, so every event, every physical event that has a cause has a complete or sufficient physical cause. So this is the thesis of physical closure or completeness. You can drop the causal stuff in there. This is a very kind of like, this is what physicalism is. The physics is closed. You don't need any other sciences to make sense of physics. So this makes the mental stuff surplus. We don't need refer to mental entities to explain events in the world, at least not physical events in the world, because we have already assumed that there is a complete, sufficient cause for every physical event. So if we are postulating these mental things, they are just extra things, and they are epiphenomena, unless they are identical or reducible. That's Jaakko Kim's. This is also seems to be very difficult for many, even professional philosophers, to understand that the whole point is to argue against non-reductive physicalism. Of course, you can say that, well, mental states are just brain states, and that's why they're efficacious. But remember, Chris Leatherby is trying to kind of save this real psychological thing within this physicalism. I'm just going to point out kind of some problems with this argument. Oh, sorry. So this argument assumes that every mental cause has a physical effect. But why would we look into the physical world? Why would we just keep the kind of the mental, psychological realm in our focus? And the second thing is that metaphysical, there's an equivocation in, so M as a mental and P as physical, but P physical doesn't necessarily mean biological or neural. So the thesis of metaphysical physicalism says, I think it's maybe, because I need to end soon, I guess. So metaphysical physicalism says that all of reality is physical. So what we should hold fundamentally real is determined by the science of physics. So there's a debate, well, how do you define physicalism? But this is one way, and I actually have my own view, which is a bit more refined. So I have argued that this actually leads to mythological dualism. So everything is physical, but we can still say that we can have mental and all sorts of other perfectly efficacious interventions on the world, because all these interventions, yes, they are ultimately physical, but it's not it's not necessarily biological. I mean, we have, and this is because mental entities are really functional entities. They function in a context, and in psychology, we function in a psychological or kind of a higher level context. It's still physical at the bottom, but why would you go there? We have this coarse-grained level where it makes perfectly sense to talk about mental states and so on. I mean, I'm speaking to you and hopefully something comes through. I could speak in another language. I could do this in physically very different ways. It's our physical ways of doing it, but it's still this mental kind of a level. It makes sense to introduce this. Anyway, so this is my background. And what I want to say that within this kind of methodological dualism framework, we can make sense of psychedelic therapy and what Chris Letterby is trying to argue for. However, what happens here is that it just reduces to perfectly normal, I mean, pharmacologically enhanced psychotherapy. So I guess I stop here. Thanks.
Kiitoksia paljon, Tuomas Pernu. Kysymyksiä ja kommentteja. Täällä on ainakin netissä. Luen Anssi Pitkäsen kysymyksen ääneen. It is plausible that the effectiveness of psychedelic therapy depends on changes in self-representation. Yet I question that from this argument, it follows that the phenomenological content is not philosophically relevant. It could be that the change in self-model and the content of the experience are intimately related, as mystical type contents seem to arise precisely when radical changes is self-presentation are occurring. When radical changes in self-presentation are occurring. Any thoughts?
Well, I guess I'm doing this in English. Yeah, I mean, I have issues with the phenomenological aspect of mental states. So, as many of you know, there is the kind of the problem of consciousness, and I mean, I should look more carefully how he actually defines these things, but I'm a bit suspicious that he's not that precise. Anyway, so when we say that something is mental, there's a variety of things that we can mean. But one thing is obviously consciousness, and then we have different notions of consciousness. And here I have two things: this phenomenal consciousness and access consciousness. And many of you are probably familiar with this distinction. But the phenomenal consciousness is the feeling that you have when you experience something, the subjective, qualitative feeling. But of course, we are conscious in the access sense and being aware of things. But I think that should not be called consciousness at all. It's more in the kind of semantic content, intentionality.
Okay, wrap up.
Are we at that stage already? Anyway, I mean, I think, in that question, I think we conflate these two notions of consciousness.